Welcome everybody, and happy St. Patrick's Day. You can probably see I've got a little bit of green going on here in the background, and got my Shamrock shirt here, so I'm good for the day here. Okay, well, welcome again to What's Next Beyond Service. This is our 30th episode entitled "Own Your Journey," and today our guest is Herb Thompson. Herb, welcome aboard to the program.
Hey, Scott, happy to be here, bud. Happy to join in, talk with you.
Absolutely. And I'm absolutely thrilled that you're our guest today. I've been looking forward to this. We've got a lot of good folks that come on this show, and you're certainly right there at the top. So, what I want to do real quick for everybody, for those that might not know Herb's background, I just want to talk to that briefly. So I'll give a bit of a thumbnail sketch on Herb and some things that he's done, and then we'll get into talking about transition from military service. That's going to be the bulk of the interview. And then we'll talk somewhat about what he's doing now, and then any volunteering efforts, passions, and whatnot in life. And then we'll save time, if we can, at the end for a Q&A, as I mentioned before we hit record here. So with that, Herb spent 21 years, nearly 21 years in the Army. He enlisted at the age of 17. So, that takes someone to sign and saying, yeah, we'll allow our son to do this, which is a big ask, right? So he went in as a very young man. The first half, about 11 and a half years of service, he was in the human resources part of the Army, and then somebody saw something in him, and he was selected and brought in as a drill instructor, as a drill sergeant, and he also was the drill sergeant of the year for the Army. That's a big deal. There's only one person gets that, and it's very selective. And he was the guy the year he was chosen. Then from there, he went to the Special Forces community. Spent about 9.5 years, airborne, Green Beret. Did a lot of amazing things. He's got a big story to tell there. But one of the things, he was also Green Beret of the year. So drill instructor of the year, Green Beret of the year. He's the only person in the history of the Army to hold both of those titles, and those are earned titles, right? It's not, well, Herb's a good guy, so he's it, But so that's a big deal, and he probably wouldn't talk about it, but I think it's unique, and it's worth kind of shedding some light again on who Herb is. So post his time in the military, he wrote a book called Transition Mission. He's a best-selling author, #1 on Amazon. In fact, you can get it on Amazon. I got mine about a year or so ago. And he wrote it in 2019, so it was right on at the beginning of his transition, while he was in that process. Education-wise, he has a BS from Southern New Hampshire University, BS in business. He also got into a program with Dartmouth, the Tuck School of Business. It's their next step transition program where they, help you kind of shift gears and get your mind working towards the business arena. And, that's a big deal for folks who are transitioning from military service. Very fortunate that he was able to do that. And then he also recently earned a MBA from Cornell. I mean, that kind of says a lot, right? That's a prestigious university. It's an Ivy League school, and not everyone gets into an organization like that too. So we're building a case for what I would say is greatness here with Herb. He's probably not going to say that, but again, sometimes you just got to call it like you see it. So that's Herb in a nutshell. I do want to quickly talk about his post-military career. So he was a management consultant for Accenture for a couple of years. He was also a freelance writer, so he was a contributor to We Are Mighty. So he did that for about a year or so. He is currently an advisory board member for Law Enforcement Connect, which I find absolute goodness in that. This program also speaks to law enforcement folks, people who are first responders. So they're under our umbrella here at What's Next Beyond Service. And then his current position, he's a program manager and the veterans program guy for ServiceNow. So we'll talk more about that here towards the end of the interview to hear what he's doing now, that role, how he's advocating for veterans who are transitioning and looking for a career. And then we'll also get into any volunteering efforts. I know he's still, heavy in the SOF community, the special operating forces community, and then again in law enforcement, as you see, he's a advisory board member. So all that said, again, hey, Herb, welcome aboard. Excited to have you here. What I want to do now is I want to talk about your background. So let's talk a little bit about your military service. If you want to share with us anything prior to your service, like, hey, at 17, you came in. I do recall that you played football. You were a good athlete, in high school. And, you've got some stories that, probably shaped how and why you went into the military. So, yeah, let's spend a little bit of time up front here, just going through your service, reminiscing a bit, sharing stories about that. And then from there, we'll talk about your transition into civilian life. So let's hop right in.
No, it sounds good, Scott. Just correct one thing. I was not Green Beret of the Year. It's a common misconception when people see drill sergeant, and just no one has never earned the Green Beret and won Army Drill Sergeant of the Year. So I just wanted to clarify that. So some of my brothers aren't out there like, what the F is he talking about? So, not you, me, you know what I mean? I don't want to be that guy.
Well, yeah. Then we're going to have to pause. I need to knock out 20 here real quick. So.
No,
hey, thanks for the clarification.
It happens frequently. No, so I'll say just a lot of it probably shaped my transition when I was early, right? Shaped my life. But we were poor. Parents worked in factories. We're going to get divorced. When I was in 8th grade, they stayed together until I graduated. My dad lost his job, had to go on welfare, and I was embarrassed about it. And like, oh my God, parents on welfare, whatever. But it formed a lot of who I was, right? And that was part of the decision making of the only way out of this is to go in the Army. Hey, I did summer school for English class in 9th grade, right? It wasn't because I'm not smart enough. It was just because I was a little punk kid. So the Army, the Army was my ticket to kind of grow up, and that's what I did. And I never forget going there and said, hey, I kept calling and they wouldn't take my calls. I'd be like, no, what are you trying to run from? I'm like, no, I just, this has been my dream, is always to go be a soldier. And then I get there and they're like, you're colorblind. I'm like, yeah, I know that. I'm red, green, colorblind, cool. And they're like, oh, you can be a chaplain's assistant or these 3 HR jobs. And I was like, no, I'm going to be, airborne infantry, all the hula stuff, if you will. And so I was like, all right, I'll take it. I don't care which looks best on the resume. And they gave me what it ended up being the one HR role. But I still had those dreams of like, no, I want to get somewhere else. It took me a while, but I figured out how to get there.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And that's part of the struggle in life, right? Is you're not always handed that thing that you want. There's a lot of work, and the trail might not be a straight trail. It may be a circuitous, route that goes all over. But, as long as you're up here and right here, knowing what you want, even if maybe you don't know, you still have that drive to pursue and figure that out. And that's a big, I'll share this occasionally on the show here. And by the way, I love your shirt. I just noticed that, St. Javelin. That's right. That's kind of a big deal now. In fact, I might want to ask you to send me the link to that afterwards. I wouldn't mind getting one of those myself to support what's happening for the people of Ukraine. But what I was going to say, Herb, is, my background is kind of similar. My folks split up when I was young. My dad was in the Air Force. They got married right out of high school. So, we didn't have a lot. It's my mom, my brother, and me. He was a couple years older, 4 years. But yeah, struggles, not having money, embarrassed, having to work jobs from 5th grade on and having to buy my own stuff to play football. I remember I bought cleats and I thought, hey, I just rolled. And back then it was like $30. That was a lot of money. Right. And I'm not going to not make the team. I've been busting my butt. I've spent money. I'm invested, and so, yeah, very, very similar background growing up. And I failed a math class. And that kept me from being a pole vaulter in college. And that was a big wake up because I was good. And I thought, hey man, I've got this, but I screwed up. And, and it was because things were going on. And so I wasn't focused, right? Talk about being kind of a punk kid. I mean, I didn't get into trouble, but
yeah,
I could have done better. And I had folks that cared about me, and they kind of straightened me out. So I was fortunate in that regard. So,
Yeah,
but
I
yeah,
think that's
I'm
a
with you.
common theme. As I hear, it's still weird to me sometimes to hear like my bio read, right? I'm trying to get comfortable with it. Um, but I think of like, hey, I had mentors, so to speak, that looked at me after me as a young kid, right? And then if you look at my military career, I wanted to be a drill sergeant, it was one of my goals, but our unit was deploying to Iraq. We came down on orders, and I was like, hey, get me out of it to a mentor. And he was up at headquarters of the Army. He's like, no, I'm keeping you on. You need that for your career. You've already deployed. We need you to train people, right? It's better for your career. Um, so I went there, right? And then I wasn't even supposed to be in the drill sergeant of the year competition. Like it was, hey, and then I was helping someone prepare for it. And the deputy commandant, I was like, hey, you sit in the seat and practice this. And they're like, you haven't studied? I'm like, no. They're like, all right, you're going to go to the competition. So I went at our base and then won it up at the Army. But had he not made me do that, I would not have been, drill sergeant, or would have took a different trajectory. And then I had a mentor who believed in me, special forces guy, Dave, who really looked at him, he looked at me like a son, I looked at him like a dad, and he's like, you could do this, because I was later in life going, but it was one of my still career goals was to earn my Green Beret. So that when I went, I was going all in, kind of like anything else I do. And I went all in and made it. And then it's like, okay, I want to keep progressing. Now I want to be a team sergeant. To me, that's the pinnacle, senior enlisted guy on the team who manages the team. And then really I got to do that for 3.5 years. And I was like, what's next? The transition hits then of like,
Right.
oh God, I've hit my goals. I hit 2 life goals at, from the age of, 7 or 8 up until, probably at that time you're taking me to about 36, 37 years old is I wanted to be a drill sergeant and I wanted to earn a Green Beret. I'd achieved both my goals, which is awesome. But then it's like, well, what's next? uh,
I got to stop you right there because both times you said what's next, and I absolutely appreciate that plug for the show. But no, I'm obviously I'm kidding there, but
but
yeah,
it
yeah.
is
What is
right.
next, right? Yeah,
Yeah, it was. And I again, meant somebody comes in, right? If we allow them to talk some sense into us. And we had just talked for a couple nights. He was a Vietnam era Green Beret and sat me down and said, hey, what are you doing afterwards? What are you doing after this? And I was about 2 years out from when I was going to retire. And I was like, I don't know, earn my bachelor's degree. That's the only thing I have checked on my to-do list. And I'm going to earn that next year. And he's like, okay, what's next? So that's really what made me start thinking and like diving into oh man, what's my transition? I don't want to be a statistic. I don't have anything to go back to. So that's why I brought up where I started is there's nothing to go back to there. There's no go back to the family business, the family, whatever. So it's like, I better figure this out. And
yeah,
through it, I started just figuring out, talking with people. So many people were gracious enough to share a conversation with me. And I said, okay, I'm going to attack this plan and let's go at this plan. And didn't necessarily succeed with the initial plan, but I love where it's gone over the last 3 years. Because actually, yesterday made 3 years from when I retired out of the Army.
yeah.
So
I saw that post, and that was an awesome post. And for those that may not know Herb, who aren't on LinkedIn, uh, number one, I recommend that you get on LinkedIn. I don't get paid to talk about LinkedIn, but it's an absolute fantastic tool for a number of reasons. But I absolutely recommend you go on LinkedIn, look up Herb Thompson, connect with Herb. He's got good news stories. His posts are always posts of affirmation, of he tells a story. I get something out of, I would say, every post that he puts on. Some are just humorous, right? And so who doesn't like that? But there's always a bit of a message there that are positive messages. And today, he's talking about his post. He talked about it's been 3 years since he retired, and he said it didn't even bring in his brain housing group that had been 3 years. He was talking to a transitioning veteran, and it came up. And I was going to say this later, but later because I've got a note here I'm looking at about today's post, and I'm just going to jump right to that. Just a brief statement. In his post, he says, "I found a new identity, purpose, and team." As he transitioned out of the military. That's huge. I mean, there's a lot to talk about there, which we'll do, when we get into the transition side. But since you brought up your post, and I'm kind of stealing your thunder a little bit, that resonated with me, because I mean those three things are so important, as we leave service, because they can be left behind, and you can struggle with one, two, or all three of those things. So, but
Yeah,
anyhow,
to me, that's like the triad of life, or the triad of success, right? And literally, I just made this up. I didn't get it anywhere, but it's what I feel is, when I was looking at what I wanted, right? And I looked at my military career. We talked about, there was nothing I loved more. That was my dreams. Let me go be a drill sergeant. Let me go be a Green Beret, deploy overseas, work by, with, and through Indigenous forces. I loved it. But then it's like, okay, what's next? But I realized after some time, after getting out, was like, I had a purpose there. There was not a day I didn't wake up and I knew I was doing something bigger than myself. I was fulfilled. I also knew what my identity was, right? Hey, I was a Green Beret. I mean, I always said, hey, call me her, but I was a Green Beret. I knew what my identity was. I was a service member. I had that. I could look in a uniform the few times I would wear it. And then I had a team. Like, I had a team that I could count on, that I know would support me, and I would support them. And quite frankly, like, we would die for each other. We did risk our lives for each other.
amen.
So that three things were key. Then that was happiness. I loved it. I didn't care what I got paid. Of course, I needed to put food on the table for the family, but I loved it. I think all too often when we look at the transition, people don't focus on that, and they go, I need to get a job and I'm going to make some money. And it's like, well, what about those three things? Because yes, we need to put food on the table, but where are you going to put that? So to me, that's like that triad of finding that. You got to go find it. It's not going to find you. But
yeah. Hey, Herb, excuse me for 1 second. Hey, folks, for those of you that have just tuned in to the interview, thanks for coming on. If you can do us a favor and mute your mic, if you have questions or, things that you want to talk about at the end of the interview, we're going to reserve a little bit of time so that Herb can answer questions and all that good stuff. So, okay, thanks so much. Sorry to interrupt you there, Herb.
no, you're good. But I think finding those things, right? And I had to go look for them. It didn't happen overnight, but I knew where I was going. It also was setting goals of, it wasn't right when I transitioned. I didn't have that, but I was looking for it. And I was like, not like I'm going to not make it through the night if I don't find it, but I know I need to find this. I need to find who I am, what's my team around me, and what's my passion. And I'll admit one thing, I thought when I was transitioning out was my family. That's the team. That's all I'm going to care about. And I do. I care about my family. I love my family's expanded. We have a blended family. My girlfriend and I, we have 4 teenagers, our 2 pups. Like, I love it, but there has to be also more in that, right? I couldn't just have the family. There was also some more there of, hey, I need a team that I work with or that I associate with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, it's funny because we all have our own story. We have our own journey. We all have very different backgrounds in the military. There's different services, different things you do within each service. Some folks are very well prepared. Others aren't. And it's a difficult thing. And some folks think that they're ready, but they're really not, because the things you just talked about, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about, I got to get a job, and, I've got bills to pay, and there's things that kind of put you into a certain category on a job search. And man, if you're not really putting time in up front, and not everybody can transition and know that, okay, in 2 years I'll be getting out. Sometimes you get injured, or maybe you don't get promoted or whatever. There's things that will cause you to leave, and it's not on your terms. And so, yeah, I know for me leaving, I retired in 2012. All the stuff that's out there now, really wasn't, in terms of the amount of organizations that are there with a catcher's mitt on looking to kind of help you along. So it was tough, but I was thinking, hey, I'm educated. I've done this for 20 some years, had a great career. This is going to be easy. But I wasn't ready for the identity change. Not that I was going in saying, hey, look at me, but, it was the camaraderie, the sense of purpose, the belonging, having that battle rhythm, that you were assigned, you get up and that goes away. And if you're not smart about how you handle that, you can really get kind of lost in the sauce and even go down some bad roads, especially if you're attempting to get a job and that's not working out because you're not the best on maybe writing resumes or you've never interviewed. And, so these are all speed bumps to, success. And life doesn't stop, right? Life continues. So you're balancing all this as life's moving forward too. So yeah, there's a lot to consider when we're transitioning.
Yeah, I think you hit two key things there. You were talking about like what it was when you were in, right? It's a way of life. It's not a job. It's not a career. The military, and quite frankly, law enforcement and some other things it's a way of life.
Yes.
And then the common theme I hear from a lot of parents, and I hear from many of them, I'm lost, right? That's how I ended up, I know we'll get into it. That's how I ended up writing the book was a young service member. She'd reached out to me and she said, hey, I'm effing lost. And I was like, oh man, I need to do more to help more people. I'm having these phone calls, but I need to do more. But I think that's it, is that you have the identity and that way of life you're living, and then it goes away. Everything goes away, not just the paycheck, but like just everything, the way you think. You're not surrounded by the same people. You're not even encapsulated inside that community of the military.
Right.
And quite frankly, the military doesn't want anything to do with your buddies, don't want anything to do with you anymore because they're mission focused.
Sure.
So people can easily end up lost and can lead to some very dark times. Hey, I would say most people would consider I'm a successful transition. Doesn't mean every day was rosy. Doesn't mean there wasn't some bad days there, right? But kept pushing through. Just like I look at like special forces, going through the special forces course, right? Like there was bad days where like, man, I was hurt. I had to push through, right? I had to push through because my goal was to get selected. My goal was to get my beret. My goal was to accomplish a mission once I was going on missions doing that. Same thing, just had to set the goals and set the missions.
Yeah. And we all have doubts, whether we want to admit them and face them, right? Sometimes people have the imposter, syndrome going on. It's like, am I really smart enough? Am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? Those things can limit you. So you're balancing that too as you're going into this new thing. And you're so right, Herb. There's an about face that happens, right? You're marching with everybody, and then there's an about face, but somehow you didn't get that, and you turn around and they're all heading back on post, and then you're out there and alone and unafraid, trying to figure out, okay, well, what's next for me? And I clearly remember my last day of service for my retirement ceremony. I wanted everybody in camis. Summertime in Virginia, didn't want folks passing out in the heat wearing their dress blues, and that's just not me anyhow. But so I remember lacing my boots up and tying them off and then blousing my trousers. And I always wondered, what would this day be like? I always wondered, and I still see that very clearly. And then that next morning, getting up 5 o'clock, coffee going, BlackBerry, making notes for the next, okay, I'm done. That was my last freaking day. That was a lonely moment because there was no one else up. The sun had just come up. I was sitting there by myself. And man, it was liberating, but it was also lonely because, that what's next thing is, my gosh, but anyhow.
Yeah, no, but it may seem not like that way, but I don't like attention, right? I know that's crazy looking at like what I do on LinkedIn and stuff, and that's something I had to overcome. I didn't have a retirement ceremony. I got out of it purposely.
Oh, wow.
I didn't want one.
Mhm.
But what I did have was when I left my team that I had been on, and then I was team sergeant for 3.5 years. We have barbecues all the time, right? So, hey, we're gonna do a going away barbecue for you. And I was like, hey, can we push that a couple weeks because my kids were living with their mom in New York State. I was like, I want them to see this.
Yes,
I want them
absolutely.
to see it because that was the important retirement thing for me was I never really told them what I did, right? It was just, hey, dad goes to work. It's a business trip when I go away. So they didn't know a lot, but I wanted them to see the type of people I was around. And then of course the guys that told some stories of what I was like being their leader and going down range and stuff. So that was the important thing for me. And then I remember, see, Zach different. I remember one of my last days on base. It was the last day I went on base to get my paperwork to sign out. It wasn't my official retirement day. I remember pumping gas on the shop at the gas station, and they were doing a division change of command for the 101st, I believe. And
Oh,
there's
wow.
3,000 soldiers marching down the road, and I was like, thank God I'm not a part of that. And I headed out the base, so I had like a different
Right.
mindset, but I was fortunate enough that team party or barbecue I talked about was like 8-9 months before I actually retired. So
Oh,
I
wow.
had some time in there approaching the actual date to where I had kind of, started mentally already doing the shift big time.
Yeah. And, Herb, I'm glad you brought that up because that is a big deal, right? Having that decompression time that's not once you're out, you know, and sometimes that happens, right? But you have to get some bit of decompression between leaving and doing whatever you do post service, and there's a number of reasons for that. And yeah, with me, I wound up being asked to stay in command for a third year, which that's a big deal. It's 2 years for a reason, right? It kind of wears you out, but
Yep.
but I decided that no, it was a family decision, and I was just at 21 years, so I could retire, and that's the decision I made. And so it happened within like 90 days, right? So I didn't have a transition plan, and that was tough, because it was so quick. I couldn't just give up the battalion, right? I stayed to the very end, and as I mentioned, 2012, it's not as all the options you have were a lot more, it was a lot more limited than it is now for sure. But yeah, there's so much that's cranking around in your mind up there, and being able to start focusing on, okay, I'm leaving. Yeah, there's a checklist and I can do that. A monkey can do a checklist, but you got to make sure that you're marking everything in the right time, in the right order. But then there's the other stuff that only you can do. Yeah, there's folks that want to give advice and help, and not everyone's advice is either good advice or the right advice for you. Having those mentors is huge. There's a lot of things that go into a successful transition.
Yeah, it is. And I think I was fortunate. You mentioned the program I did up at Tuck, Next Step Transition to Business. That was the most important thing for me. If we're looking at like a military operation, that was the decisive point, right? Because until that moment, I doubted whether I would be successful without the uniform. I doubt it. I said what I'd come from growing up. I had nothing else, right? That was it. And then I had my military experience of almost 21 years. I went there and I'm like, I'm at this prestigious Ivy League university. I'm surrounded by veterans and Olympians going in this. Day one, I was like, I'm going to be okay. Because I looked around and they were very intelligent people, but I realized I'm holding my own here. These people are going through the similar process I am. I'm at one of the top universities in the country talking with professors, and they're engaged in my conversations. That was the moment for me. I knew I was going to be successful. I didn't know what it would look like, but I believed in myself again, just like I had to earn drill sergeant, just like I had to earn my beret, just like on missions overseas to come back home. I believed in myself. But if I didn't do that, I don't know where that moment would have come from. But for me, that was the culminate, or like decisive point.
Yeah, I'm getting chill bumps just sitting here listening to this because it's so true. And I was looking at, and you'll see, I've been looking at your LinkedIn profile, getting ready for the interview. But I dropped down into the recommendations section, and folks are saying exactly that about you. So that syncs up. And that's so good to know. Because you don't know what you don't know, and it's easy to kind of doubt yourself, because I think transition is harder for people who have served a lifetime, right? You've given the best years of your life to the military, and now it's time to do something different. You're not a civilian. You're an Army guy that's got to figure out, what the hell is being a civilian all about? And I'm not saying it's not harder for junior folks that, maybe, do one or two tours. That there's things there that, have to be considered too. But I think people who do 20, 30 plus years, it can be much harder because of the cultural shift. That's a huge paradigm shift for them. And, something you said, I wanted to not forget to mention this. You talked about having your kids at the barbecue, which was your kind of, farewell to Army and friends. Boy, that's significant because your kids know you as dad, right? And, I would come home, my rank would fall off as soon as I walked in the front door, right? So they saw the other part of me, but it's good that they got to hear stories about other people that love you and would die for you and can share stories about you that your kids probably had no clue about. Maybe they did. You're a good guy, and obviously that you're a good dad, and they know that. But it's so nice that other folks were there to share that part of your life, with your kids. I think that's so important.
No, it is. It's if you have family, they're all part of the decision, right? And they're all
Yeah,
part of
amen.
it. And for me, I always wanted to keep them. I felt like I was protecting them by them not knowing, right? So they didn't know what I mean, I almost never came home in uniform. So they might have saw me a couple times from above the age of 5, and they're teenagers now. Saw me in uniform, right? So they just knew he was in the Army, did something. But to me, that was an important thing to like kind of close the book on that, but so they can see that for the future.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, what's next? Because now, hey, I still want to provide for them. I still want to make them proud. I still want to do that. Let me figure out what's going to be next because there's more life to live, and I'm gonna get the most out of it.
Yeah, amen. And yeah, I did something similar, with that career wise. Same thing. I would get dressed at work, change over to civvies, come back. I don't have I love me wall. All my stuff was in boxes in the garage. I wanted my kids to have a normal life. We lived off base. Those were conscious decisions too, because, I've got 2 daughters and, I didn't want them being little Marines. Now, when they got disciplined, they may have felt like they were Marines, but outside of that, right, I wanted
Yeah.
them to have a life, living as Americans, experiencing what other kids, go through so that they didn't have a transition to make, when they finished high school, but yeah. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's get into, some specifics of your transition, whatever you want to talk about when it comes to that. You wrote a book. You talked about your why for writing the book. And as I shared with you, I bought the book and then it disappeared off my stand next to the couch that, or I'd sit and spend a lot of time reading. And I think I know who the culprit is, but I'm not going to, not going to dime them out completely. But anyhow, so yeah, I started to read your book. It's a fantastic read. And there's a lot of people that have bought it. It's a best-selling book, and it's all about transition. And one of the folks that gave you a recommendation on LinkedIn, talked about your plain spoken, that you can take things that are seemingly complex and you can whittle them down to nuggets that people can understand and go, wow, okay, I get that. And that's what your book is like too. It's written so folks can understand it. They can derive meaning from it. Let's talk about, again, your inspiration for writing that book. And then if you want to share stories about, folks who you've kind of helped bring along the line, to help get themselves straight for transition, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, the book said I was actually coming back from the spine surgeon, right? And it had set up this call like, hey, can we push it for a few minutes? And I ended up talking with this soldier who's in their transition leave, doing an internship and was lost, right? And I was like, I need to do more. So I actually wrote 2/3 of the book that weekend. I got home Friday night, sat down, and I got up to use the facilities, if you will, and to recharge with drinks and stuff and food, and got a little bit of sleep. But it was like, how do I approach this? Well, it's the same how I was approaching my transition. That was at about the 8 months after I'd retired. So I had a new job. I was in the Cornell program for my MBA. I'd done all that. So I'm like, okay, it was all fresh here. But I really approached, what did I know? I knew my military, right? I knew how to be how to do military operations. This was a military operation. It's just now you're deploying into the U.S. for the rest of your life, or if you're deciding to go somewhere else. So I just try to break it down and what were the actual steps. A little help guide, people could put it in their pocket, their trousers, and their camis, if you will, and go about their business. Kind of like many other guides I had when I grew up. It was little manuals of common task and little field guides like that, or field manuals in the Army. It was the same thing. You carried around in your pocket. Hey, this was the same thing. And just said, and I had some people read it like, hey, what do you think? And then I was like, let's go for it and get it out there. Because I did, well, I don't believe I had a difficulty in transition. I had bad days. I had talked with so many who did have the difficulty. And the difference was I started about 2 years out from retirement. And then I had that believing myself before retirement. And I talked with so many people that I approached it like a mission with the same energy as when I joined the Army. And that to me was like, hey, let me get out there to help other people.
Right. And just by the way, Michelle, thank you for putting the link up to Herb's book. So you guys see that there. And Herb, what we'll do is, once we're done with the interview and it gets posted on YouTube, and I'll put a link on to it in LinkedIn so folks can go to the full interview. Anything like that you want us to put in the description part on the YouTube video, link to your book and anything else that you feel is important, we'll do that. I didn't want to forget to let you know. And again, thanks, Michelle. So Herb, when you're looking at transition, and you did 2,000, I recall, reading, you did 2,000 informational interviews. That's mind-boggling, right? But you put yourself out there, and that also helped you with becoming a skilled, interviewer, because you're also interviewing the folks that you want to work for too. And you learn on how to do that well. And so that being the case, what advice do you have for folks on informational interviews? Because I think those are very important.
A, do them. B, I'll be honest, don't overthink it. So many people are like, oh my God, an informational interview. Most of us started learning to talk to, I don't know what age, I don't remember, quite frankly, but we all started talking to each other around 2 years old. Let's not complicate this dang thing. Just go talk to each other, right? But so many people are like, oh my God, informational interview. No, just go have a conversation. Hey, I'm trying to get something out. Let's be real, I'm trying to get something out of them. I'm either trying to learn about their career, how they were successful, about their company, about something. What am I giving? Hey, I'm sharing my story. Maybe I help them down the road. Who knows what I'm going to give them? I don't know yet. And then hopefully I turn it into another connection and another conversation. And that's what I did. And you said earlier, but I didn't know what I didn't know, but I knew I didn't know a lot. So I said, I better start talking to people. And that's where I was fortunate. I said I had that time leading up to my retirement. So I just started calls, and I would not recommend doing it. I did them back to back. Just because who I am, I would have a 5-minute conversation with you, Scott, and I wouldn't even know who I was talking to because they were back to back to back to back. And I'd be like, oh, this is who this person is. But they never knew because I was just having a conversation like normal people do, right? But through that, I articulated my value much better after 2000 than after one, right? I learned how to talk about myself better. I learned what questions to ask, what insights, what to look for. I learned who to talk to, where I'm wasting time on informational interviews, and where the sweet spots were. And that was just by going out and doing it.
Right. No, absolutely. That repetitive thing, right? Anything you do, you become better at through repetition, and you learn. And talking to those folks, when you're listening, they're giving you pointers too, all right? And so you're bringing that into your, the arrow in your quiver, so to speak. And, the other thing is, I'm sure you use LinkedIn as a tool for all of that, connecting wise and networking. And so as you're looking at that, something that folks need to think about as well is, okay, I might not know exactly what I want to do, but I can see there are these folks that are in these industries. Maybe I can connect with that person. And then, like you said, then they wind up connecting you with others. And so that's a great way to kind of, just get a nibble on what the company's like, maybe what their culture is like, what jobs they may have open, and if that person's doing what you want, they can fill you in on what they like about what they're doing, or hey, this is going on too, and then maybe that's, well, okay, yeah, that's not me. So I mean, there's just a wealth of information, like you talked about, to your point, with these interviews.
There is, and this is the analogy I use. If you're dating right now, or you're in the market, and you want to date, if you're not doing anything online, it's at your work, whatever your sphere is, right? Your work, if you go to church, your civic organizations, the local bar, that's your only places you're going to find a date. Online dating with all these dating apps open you up to the world. So now the world is yours. That's how LinkedIn is. Who do you know in your network that can help you? Most transitioning service members have almost none, because all the people at the unit are worried about doing their work. Now, maybe they know some people in the community, but it's very small. But now LinkedIn opens you up to the world of, here's all these possibilities. Go out and talk to people and find them. LinkedIn is, I think that has been one of the huge game changers, is service members leverage and LinkedIn, like I did, to make those conversations happen, but not even just conversations, to learn from others when they post, to engage and have some conversations and talk with people and gain knowledge. And for me, I always said, hey, I might not make all the right decisions, but I'm going to make an informed decision. And that's what I did through all those informational interviews and all the researching online and looking all over LinkedIn and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's the smart way to do it. And you touched on a point too. It's a lot of times service members don't even really know LinkedIn's out there, right? Maybe they stumble upon it as they're leaving because someone says, hey, you heard of LinkedIn? And then, so who are all their connections? They're all of the folks that they serve with and other folks in the military, which is nice, right? But you have to realize, I've got to step outside of all these nice folks that I love, and they're cool, but I've got to start looking outside of that and make those connections, so that you can start shaping your game. And that's important. I had a lot of folks I was connected with on LinkedIn. My last year of service, I didn't know what the heck LinkedIn was. Someone said, oh yeah, everyone's using it. It's how you get a job. Okay, that sounds cool. But yeah, when I look back on it, most of the folks I was connected with were in the military. And then there were folks that I didn't really have a game plan for who I was connecting with. People would send me connections. I'd send, oh, this person looks interesting, but yeah, shaping the battlefield with LinkedIn is a big deal. So something I was thinking about earlier was, on some people are transition experts. Again, some are self-proclaimed. You're an expert because you experienced it, you wrote a book about it, you're helping people, and it's good help. So, I think expert applies. And when you look at all of your interfacing with folks that are transitioning from military service, what are some of the things that you come across that folks struggle the most with? And we've talked about some of that, but what are those areas that you see folks, consistently tripping on, or not having focus with?
Yeah, I'll talk first generalities and then specific. So not knowing what they don't know, right? I will say not having confidence, like I talked about myself. And I'll say there's some that have an entitlement of, oh, I'm just going to get a job given to me. Thank you for your service means. Thank you for your service. Here's your job, $100,000 salary. By the way, we'll drop a Ferrari at your. No, that crap doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But there is a segment of the population of transition veterans that believe that, because we see thank you for your service, and we are so lucky here in the U.S. compared to any other country or compared to any other time in our time period of our support for veterans. So there's that, and then there's the micro stuff, right? Of okay, not what can I do, but what do I want to do? Figure out what I want to do, and that's a lot easier said than done, and it may take you a while to get there. But hey, where do I want to be when I'm 60? I'm 70. Whatever you consider you're going to retire permanently at and enjoy life on the beach. Now, how do I backwards plan from that? And how do I get there? And to me, too many people look at that first target of this is the job I need when I get out of the military. I need to put food on the table. I want to do this as soon as I get out versus where do I want to be in 20, 30 years? Now let me backwards plan. just like we would in the military. What's the objective? Let me backwards plan. Hello, we've been taught
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's so easy and common to get caught up in that, because I understand it. Believe me, you said earlier about older or the people are in longer. I believe they are institutionalized, and it's harder to make the mental shift. But hey, you get to assume a little risk because you do have a retirement paycheck. Somebody that gets out after 4 or 5 years in general is not getting the retirement paycheck, but they probably have less of a mindset shift to do in general. But I think that, hey, what do I actually want to do? What can I do? And then how do they line up, and what does it take to get there, and create a plan to get there? It may not be today, but where do I want long term versus this short term objective? And it's kind of actually where society is kind of now, right? A lot of it is instant gratification, or the instant, I need this now, versus I'm going to go work for it, and this is where I'm going to get down the road, and this is the plan to get there.
That's fantastic advice. And the discipline part of what you just said, that should come easy to us because we're in the military, right? And some folks just kind of, that discipline part goes because of you don't know what you don't know, and there's stress involved, and you don't want to make a bad decision, and it can become overwhelming because of the, litany of things that get stacked on top of each other as you're, making that move. And that's a good point. For folks that are career folks, you have the luxury, and it is a luxury, right, of having a retirement, because that's something that folks on the outside don't really have anymore. Our parents, that generation, they had retirements. They would work at the plant for 30 years and they had a retirement plan, and that shifted along the way. So yeah, it is a blessing to have a retirement, but being able to think strategically along with the tactical decisions that have to be made as you're transitioning, you have to understand that long game to inform, where you're going now. Not that you have to know exactly what you'll be doing in 10 years, but, at least having some vision on that so that you start making those informed decisions that, start getting you going in that right direction. Yeah, absolutely. So
yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And I think we're seeing a change, right? There's a lot of people in the transition space that are out there trying to get this to people. But I often say, if you came to me 5 years before retirement, dude, I was worried about going to kill the bad guy. How can we kill the bad guy? I wasn't worried about my transition. I was worried how can I best be the best Green Beret, best on my team, and then how can I best lead the team? I wasn't caring about my transition until it became real for me, which was that conversation at the 2-year mark. So I think once it becomes real, then you got to dive all in, right? And I think the other common thing I hear, Scott, where I think people do wrong, they disservice themselves, is I don't have time. Who has time, right? Do you have time to sit down and watch a movie? Or you have time to go, ride your motorcycle? Do you have time to go to church? I'm not saying none of that's not important, but
all right.
You have time. Do you want to lose a little bit of sleep, maybe for an hour a night? So you start diving into this. You have time. What do you know? The military teaches us time management very well. Because if you're not there in the right spot on a mission, or even in training, bad stuff happens. So like you learn how to manage your time. It's the same thing, manage time. We turn that off. Yeah, you gotta make the time.
Yeah, Herb, that is gospel truth right there. You absolutely have time because you're the person who manages your time. You can become overwhelmed by events because you're not managing your time, right? And, just a quick story. I remember when you get selected for a battalion or regimental command, you got to go to a 2-week, how to be a commander course, right? And, there's good stuff, right? Because a lot of previous commanders come in and talk to you. Hey, these are the things you need to know. Here's my experience. And I remember, and I'm not going to tell you who this person was, but it was a Marine general and was talking to the lieutenant colonels who would be battalion commanders, talking about time management, all this stuff. And he talked about fit reps. And he was like, yeah, you don't really have time for that. And I almost fell out of my seat, and he kept talking about it. And it's like, you're busy and BS. You make time. These are people's careers. Just because you got a little bit of rank doesn't mean that your fitness report is going to be worth a crap. right? And you've got a good title, but if you're not writing and spending time to make sure that you are covering what needs to be covered for that person's fit rep for their career, and because it's the right damn thing to do, that freaking floored me. I just soapbox second here,
Yeah,
but
no.
it really, and I raised my hand like a knucklehead. I said, well, sir, that's not really true. Just like you, I said, you make time, and that's important. I said, that's one thing I will always make time for. And then I got the death stare from
Oh, yeah.
everybody in the room, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. And no, I agree with that. It's like how you make time is you take care of your people, right? What do you
Yeah.
know? That's something ingrained in you from a leader. You don't stop just because you make a certain level. You still take care of your people. It's all about the people, or else there is no Marine Corps, there is no Army, there is no Special Force, wherever you want to. There's no police force. It's all about
Yeah.
the people. And then to me, the kind of other thing that I see that I encourage people to do is this is your most important mission when you're transitioning. Hey, yeah, I'm not saying going to Iraq, going to Afghanistan, going wherever is not important, but this is the rest of your life. That was for 8 months, 9 months, 6 months, 15 months, and hopefully to come home safely.
Yeah.
But this is the rest of your life. This may be 30, 40, like me. I served like you, a little over 20 years. God willing, we're going to be living a lot longer after that, we have more life outside of the military than in. So like, it's an important mission. We got to like dive into it like that, not just, oh, the best of my life is over. Like, is anything going to match? I'm surrounded in Afghanistan, surrounded. We're fighting our way up. Nothing will match that. But I'm not looking for something to match that because I don't like getting shot at. That wasn't fun. Like we can look back at it romantically, but it wasn't fun to like be surrounded and go, oh, let's fight our way out of this thing. No, hey, it's okay. It's going to be different. Let's find the next thing and be excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's figuring out, where am I in time now, and what's that next objective, that next mission, and you're dead on accurate, and it's just, I mean, how many times do you hear folks talk about, hey, I went back to my hometown and met up with my buddies, or I went to a class reunion or whatever.
Mm.
And I mean, some of that you're going to reminisce, right? Because that was that time in life. But so often, a lot of those folks haven't left that, they haven't left the glory days and have gone on to other things. It's not that they're bad people, right? I mean, and maybe that's fine for them, but yeah, you have to kind of, because you're not going to be able to live those times because that's done, and you got to let it go smartly and figure out putting time to a good transition and, a smart, healthy choice spiritually, physically, mentally, as you're evolving as this new guy or gal. So yeah, absolutely. Words of significant wisdom here. So hey, I'm looking at my old handy watch here, and it's, we've been doing this about 55 minutes. So let's kind of shift gears a bit here and talk about what you're doing now. Now, I know your current position, you've been brought on to be the Veterans Program Manager with ServiceNow. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with them? I don't know how much you want to get into that, but that sounds like a very purposeful job.
No, it is. And like I say, I'm not working now. I'm fulfilling a passion, right? I get to, when I was doing my free time, focus on transitioning veterans. And I don't think it's up to the government. I think, communities and companies around the country, if they want to maximize the veteran talent, they have to push in. I found that at ServiceNow. I said I was looking for somewhere to make an impact with a company making impact, and I found it here. And when I saw the job description, actually on LinkedIn, I was looking for jobs randomly every few days because I took time away from work, a little sabbatical. I looked at my girlfriend and said, this role was written for me. They might as well just put Herb Thompson. This is me. This is me. God dang, let me apply for this. You know what I mean? Let me tweak the resume.
Clouds parted, right?
Yeah, it was like that was it, right? And now 4.5 months into it, I feel the same way, right? Because the company's invested a lot of money. We have great people transitioning out of the military. Let's skill them in our platform. Multi-billion-dollar company all over globally, but most people have never heard of it because it's on the back end. It's usually used as Sportus, it's digital workflows. So yeah, I was like, dude, this is awesome. And now I get to come in here and like, let's scale it up, right? Let's help get these people skills who now they have it's not a job, it's a pathway to a career in tech for the rest of their life if they want to do it. And that's what I'm doing on a daily basis.
Well, I think everyone's going to want to work with them now. All these folks coming out of the service. Hey, hook up with Herb Thompson,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I would say it was built before I got here, the skill bridge. A lady named Tracy Miller, Navy veteran, built it. I'll say she birthed it. It's what I joke. I was like, she had the baby and now I'm taking care of it and we're raising it. And it's world-class program that we're putting together to get people into tech, right? And when I
Yeah.
say people, the goal for our next July cohort is 100 people, 100 transitioning service members in there. We'll
Wow.
go bigger if we can get bigger, you know what I mean? And I'm scaling it up, doing all the stuff that needs to do that with the help of my colleagues. And it's, to me, I love it. It's
Yeah,
tremendous.
that's a great number. I mean, because you're doing service to your organization, but absolutely to those individuals, right? That's, and you talk about skill bridge, without getting into, the in-depth stuff with skill bridge, advice for somebody on skill bridge, what's your best advice for somebody for how to approach skill bridge at the unit level so they can be successful in getting it approved?
Yeah. So one thing separate from you, do your research, find the best fit for you, right? Two, talk to your command early, right? Because let's be real, the command can see it as I'm losing this person for 4 months or 3 months, whatever it is. How's that benefit me? Well, truthfully, it doesn't benefit the command. Go pound sand, man. It's for the service member. But you got to talk to the command and communicate and say, hey, this is why I'm doing it. I've identified this. This is how it's in my career goals. This is how I see it helping my family out for life. Hey, by the way, this is why I'm going to say this unit was awesome when I leave because you guys let me do this. I'm going to go out here and be a good recruiter on the street, passively, point people towards the Navy, Marine Corps, wherever. So I'd say talk to the command. You can't just drop it on them, but then research, just like we've been talking about transition, find the best fit for you. I know we have a world-class program. It's improving as service now. It's not for everyone, right? If you want to go do something else, go find your thing that is the best for you. You get one chance at it. Go do it and then leverage it to a new career, not just hey, this helps me for a few months or helps me get my first job. No, where are you looking for a career?
Absolutely. And, for those young guys and gals that are, looking at skill bridge, what you just said is right. You have to be your advocate. You have to be your best advocate for that. So that, because some of these folks, like you said, their war fighting is their mission. So that's what they're looking at. You come up with this skill bridge. A lot of folks don't even, I think the Army has adopted that as a commander's program, right? So now it's the battalion commander, the regimental commander as part of something that they have to manage now. So I think it's probably gaining, where it needs to gain traction.
It's gaining steam.
Yeah. I think with the Marine Corps, I talked to someone who's still in and they told me that they, as far as they knew, it had not been indoctrinated into a commander's program. That makes a difference because that means the commander has to do something about it. And there's, they set up, these are the tenets of how we do this so that you have some bit of, uniformity to how these packages are handled and the process developed, which they need. If this is a DoD thing, right? So they need to start figuring that out so that it's fair to people too, because, sometimes, like you said, the answer is going to be no, and that's hard to swallow. And hopefully it's no because everyone's doing their part and it's really no, not just I'm too busy. That sounds like a boondoggle,
Yeah. So, I mean, just from what I'm seeing, and I may regret saying this, is I'm seeing the most support from the Air Force, then the Navy, then the Army, then the Marine Corps. Hey, now Coast Guard is getting involved too. So we're still trying to figure that out, right?
Well, and that's a good thing because that's just recent that they were brought into the fold. Yeah, it's a big deal.
But to me, if you look at innovation, and I have nothing against the Marine Corps, but when I think of the Marine Corps, I don't think of innovation. I think of honor, tradition. When I think of the Army, I'm sorry, I don't think of innovation. I think a little more old school, right? And so if you flip it, it's like, well, the Air Force is out front. They have a new digital approval system for it. That's kind of the Air Force's thing, right? They're more cutting edge, for lack of better words.
They should share with the other services, right?
Yeah. So
here's how we're doing it.
It's changing, right? It's changing, and I think it's awesome what's happening. You see commands, you see more companies, let's be real, more companies like ServiceNow put more behind it. Tons of companies out there because it's such a great program to get a service member in there, train them up or work with them, and then, hey, you come work with us, or you go work somewhere else. But I think everybody's seeing the benefits once they kind of understand it.
Right. And where else? And you and I talked about this on our pregame phone call a couple of days ago. What other organization is going to let you leave for up to 6 months and pay you? Yeah, we know you're leaving us, but we like you so much. Hey, go work with these guys. We'll pay you, and hopefully it works out. That just doesn't exist anywhere. And so it's a big deal, and it's something that hopefully the DoD can start handling better. Not detracting from their mission, but giving folks who have earned the ability to, because you have to earn that too, right?
Yep.
It can't just be that it goes to everybody.
Yep.
It needs to be folks that have worked hard, who are dedicated, who have been successful. Those are at least for me, those are the folks that should have their first shot at this. If it's some guy that's, mediocre, he's pissed off at the Army, he just never really, made the transition, he's, and again, not that he's a bad guy, but you have to, there has to be things that kind of discriminate, who's going to get what. And real quick, my brother-in-law is a 30-year Army guy. He beats me every day, over the head and shoulders with Marine jokes. And, so I'm going to beat into submission, parade rest. So nothing you say bad about the Marine Corps is going to even faze me.
Yeah, no, I have Marine buddies too. So, but honestly, we have a couple Marines in the current one. We have some Marines coming up in the next cohort. So we're also rolling out veterans, right? Military spouses, veterans, dependents, caregivers, a program for them in June to do the same thing. Offer similar training. We've condensed it a little bit to try to get them in the workforce. And it's not a charity case. It's we need talent. This is an untapped market. We have some other areas of focus too, of other people in my organization are working on, but that my focus is the veterans. So that's a lot of what I'm doing. And that's why I love it every day. Like it's not work for me. I look forward to opening up my laptop every day.
No, absolutely. And it sounds like you've got sounds like you control, a portion of your destiny with your work day, which is nice too, right? Having the ability to, not necessarily, maybe an 8 to 5, but, you're managing your day, and and when you're achieving, the objectives and the goals for your stated position, that's great that you've got that flexibility to do that, I'm sure. And you mentioned military spouses. Man, that's a whole nother show, right? That you can just devote to that, part of the overall wheel of all things military. And military spouses, they carry such a heavy load, and they sacrifice their career so often. I know some folks are able to make it work, but that's exceedingly difficult. And so, understanding the value that these spouses can bring to an organization, especially once the chair stopped with their husband or wife who had been in the military, and it's time for both of you to get back into a career if that's what you both want to do. Understanding who those people are and what the value that they bring to the organization is a big deal, and certainly you know that. And it says a lot about you and your organization for opening up the aperture to bring in those categories of people that you just talked about. I think that's incredible. Good on you guys.
Yeah, I think it's part of why I love our culture. It's very innovative. It's very forward thinking, and that's why I wanted to come here. Right. Once I saw the job description, I learned more information. That's why I was like, dude, this is me. I found my place. I love it. So I get to do fun stuff all day long. At least fun stuff to me.
Yeah, and that's important because, like you said, it's you're living your passion there, and not all of us can find that, or maybe it takes a while. And passion doesn't necessarily just have to be your job too, right? It can be, things that you do for yourself. Whether it's going out and hiking or hunting, fishing, some type of side thing, a side hustle. And so, talking about that, let's shift real quick and talk about things that you're doing outside of that. What are the things that that make you who you are outside of work. And, you're still involved in the soft community to a degree, and, law enforcement. What are some of the volunteering things that you're doing and finding value in?
Yeah, I help out a few transition organizations. If they reach out to me, hey, Herb, you come in and speak, as long as it's virtual and I ain't got to travel, that we will figure it out, right? So I do that. You talk about the Law Enforcement Connect advisory board member. I'm a board member for another special operations focused. That's really focused on the service member and the family and the health of them. So I'm on an advisory board for that. I've tried to give kind of what's the pulse of what's needed for the force, you know what I mean, from the transition, or the service member's perspective, or veteran who's come out of soft specific, because they've identified some very specific physical, mostly physical, and some mental things that are tied to it, that are tied to soft. And they call it the operator syndrome. And I'm friends and proud to be friends with the doctor who coined it, Chris Free. And there are some specific things that affect us because of what we've been through. So we're focusing on that. So I do that. And then the rest of the time is enjoy time with the family, right? Enjoy time with the family. Hey, I'll go out hunting, I'll go fishing, go out trim the roses. But that's pretty much all my volunteer right there. But I'm always willing to talk with someone, share. But I've also learned I can't do too much, right? And work-life balance, and you got to fill the cup and have it run over, but it can run over too much to where you're starting to get drowned from it. So hey, there is some stuff I've stepped away from or pushed back on, just because, hey, I want to have some time to enjoy my family, and I need some sanity too, of some me time. So for the long run, I could keep doing more long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Terry just put up there, amen to balance. And that's so true. And balance isn't always balanced, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like you just said, not to repeat anything you said, but I know for me, once I got out and started doing things that I did post service, I was with two different nonprofits. I helped a guy on the first one, and then I developed the second one from the ground up with two other partners. And at some point, my wife was like, I feel like you've kind of gone back into the Marine mode, because you're spending a lot of time doing that, and then your off time, you're speaking to groups, you're going and talking to the county where we live about workforce development, and she goes, it's all great stuff, but it's we kind of talked about you not being so unavailable. And it's ding ding ding, yeah, you're right. And so because I did want to be spending more time with my daughters that I didn't have time to spend with. So yeah, I was guilty of that, and I'm much better at that now, right? But of course, my daughters have also moved on in life too, so I've got more time in that regard. But that's a big deal, that balancing of your commitments and being true to yourself. Because if just like we learn, you got to be able to keep yourself healthy to be healthy in other relationships and exactly. Be there for people. Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, look, we're a little over an hour here. You got a couple minutes for entertaining some questions if folks have
sure
them?
I got 10-15 minutes.
Okay, cool. Now, as I said, Sarah, she's off enjoying life in Colorado for a couple days with her husband, so it's going to be messy with me handling this, because I'm on my mobile device, so I can't necessarily easily transition in between. So let me go real quick, and if folks want to have questions, or if they have questions for Herb, if you can raise your hand, and then we'll just go in order there. So I think I saw Ryan with a hand raised, but oops. Let me go back here. And again, this is gonna be ugly. Okay. Well, so far I don't see any brave. Oh, hey, David. I had a feeling David was just waiting. So yeah, David, what you got, brother?
I was just trying to be patient and see if anybody else wanted to flap their lips before I threw in my two thoughts.
You're a gracious man.
Thanks, Herb, for joining us and gracing us with your intelligence and your experiences, and I really appreciate that. And everybody that Scott has on, I learned so much from. I'm not a veteran. I'm a law enforcement guy with 20 years of experience there, and 10 years in EMS before that, and retired a couple years ago. So much of the things you talked about and said and are so parallel to the law enforcement world on the way out the door. And shedding that uniform becomes tough, especially when you're a fixture in the community, which I think is the different piece that the military doesn't have, which makes it a little bit more difficult to shed that identity, because it's people always see you as that person, but you're not anymore, and your legal authority goes out the door on the day you sign your papers. So I really appreciate the insights you have for transition. The one thing I just wanted to put out there was the skill bridge concept, which I really love, and something that doesn't exist in the law enforcement world. And I wondering if, if we can connect offline one day and just kind of learn more about that and how we can potentially add law enforcement to that skill bridge concept. And taking, I was a street level drug guy. It's hard to bring that into, the real world. You get locked up on the other side for that. But so I think there's a lot of things that a lot of ways to discuss the law enforcement piece when we talk about skill bridging as a concept. And so thank you for putting that out there and talking about that. It got my wheels turning. So I just want to say thank you for everything you talked about today, and I appreciate the parallels, and look forward to connecting outside of the virtual world.
Yeah, one of the things I've talked with LEC about, and we've talked, the difference is, hey, skill bridges have been congressionally mandated across the U.S., right? You know better than I how law enforcement is so disjointed. There's state, local, federal, and everybody. So who's going to pay for that law enforcement officer while they go through it? But
that's right.
I know people are looking at it and doing that, because it is, and even if it's not that, maybe it's in your off time. Hey, if it's instead of full time, maybe it's one night a week or every Saturday. So there's some things in place. But I agree, for you, law enforcement officer, a lot of time that identity, like you said, is way harder, because hey, I leave the base, I go back, nobody knows me anyways. Where they see you walk down the street every day anyways. Now, oh, you're wearing different clothes today, but you're still officer. Oh, you're not officer. Oh, wait, what? Yeah, I get it, man. It's tough, but I see the very common connections, and I'll be frank. Like I said earlier, U.S. veterans have no shortage of support. You'll know that there's almost no support for law enforcement officers. You know that better than I do. So that's something I think that is changing, but it's steering a battleship. So it's going to take quite a while.
Yeah, Vaughn, who's not with us anymore for the call, she had once said a while back that today's law enforcement officers are reminiscent of yesterday's Vietnam vets, and she's made that bridge academically for me, and it's so true. And I'd love to pick your brain offline and see if there's ways that we can maybe collaborate and kind of help build that transition model.
Yeah, man, reach out.
Well, hey, thank you, David. And, the other thing I know is probably tough that you just can't go get a cup of coffee, wherever you roll in. So,
and a couple donuts.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to go there, but I knew you would.
That's all good.
There, so.
It's all good.
Yeah, we always
crayons. It's cool.
Yeah. Hey, I that's what I'm doing next, as soon as we get off the call here. Hey, love you, brother. Appreciate your time, David.
Awesome.
Okay. Let me see here. So it looks like we have, Jesse and Ryan. I think Ryan had his paw up first, so we'll go ahead and go to Ryan, who is a police officer in South Carolina. What you got, Ryan?
Hey, Herb. First off, thanks for coming on. Definitely learned a lot from what you spoke about today. And secondly, appreciate your service as an Air Force veteran. You guys, what you did in your career was, something that, we all need. So thank you for that. As well as I think right now, for today, I think you got the better beard going than Scott does, though. So,
hey, by far.
By far, even though, it's good. But my question, because I wanted to see with you is like, you said you worked in a little bit of the HR side with the resumes and things like that. And as a transitioning veteran and now law enforcement officer, I mean, I always said that we always have skills, but we're not really able to articulate or put that those skill sets in writing to fit those job descriptions that we're trying to seek. So what kind of, like, from your experience doing that, what would you kind of say as far as to be able to do that as to be better, I guess you could say?
Yeah, you hit one of them. Skills translate, right? Like job description to job description. We'll say computer programmer, law enforcement officer, or whatever, it doesn't match up. But what were the specific skills? What are the specific skills required over here? Those can align up. How can you articulate them? That is language, right? It's you're talking in a different language, right? You're talking in, hey, is this now I'm no longer speaking German, I'm going to speak Spanish, right? So you need to translate to that business language. Numbers translate across industry. Hey, saved X amount of dollars, saved X amount of work hours, increased efficiency by 22%, whatever, that translates any business. I don't care. So those type of things, identifying that is what do it. But at the end of the day, so I truly believe a veteran or a law enforcement in transition, their resume is never going to jump off the board like someone who's been doing that career field that the job requires for the last 10 years. So a lot of it is, how do you get your resume past that step? Hey, you do the networking, you talk with people, you do that, and then, hey, your resume gets a little extra look, you get in there, do the interview, and then you've practiced your interview techniques, you practice knowing yourself and how you articulate your value, and then you're able to do it. So hopefully that answered short answer to your question.
Perfect. I appreciate that, actually. And that's kind of just a big thing we see across both veterans and law enforcement, is that we have so many skills, but transferring it into a civilian resume is by far, like you said, a foreign language. So thanks so much.
Yeah, but
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, thanks for that, that question there. It's an important question, because there's, as we talked about, the things that you don't know, what you don't know. That's the whole resume thing is a big deal for folks. And also, Ryan, thanks for calling me the other day. Ryan called me out of the blue just to see how I was doing. So we had a nice conversation, and that's what we veterans need to do more of, right? We need to check in on each other, and it doesn't have to be an hour or two call. It can just be 10 or 15 minutes, whatever. But I thank you for that. That meant a lot. I appreciate that. And now let's see. Jesse is still here. So Jesse Hamilton. He was actually on my last interview here last week. He's a idly guy like you, Herb. He served in the Army. He was a drill sergeant. You guys have just a lot of stuff in common here. So I can't wait to hear what Jesse has to say.
Yeah, no, thanks, Scott, and thanks so much, Herb. I got a lot out of your talk. I think if I could concisely summarize my Army career, it's Herb light. I was a drill sergeant in the reserves for a couple of years, and then I spent my last year in the Army as an advisor to the Iraqi Army. So I got a little bit of a taste. So it was really interesting to hear how. And I think we probably joined at the same time in late 90s. So really interesting to hear about your career, how it progressed, and what you've done since. So my question is specifically related to veterans who transition out of the military and into graduate degree programs. So we use MBA, for example. You went through an MBA, a super competitive MBA program, later in life. And you probably, within your military cohort, you were probably in classes going through the program with mid-career officers and enlisted who got out. And I find myself interacting with a lot of those veterans here at Penn. And I'm wondering if you saw any common, knowing what you know now, working, in a corporate job where you interact with a lot of veterans, are there pitfalls that you observed, perhaps some of your peers making or maybe some that you fell into yourself. Like I fall into pitfall. I'm probably going to fall into a pitfall later today at some point. But are there common pitfalls that you see among that, mid-career officer enlisted that they might want to avoid?
Yeah, no. Yeah, thanks for a question. The herb light, that's hilarious. Yeah, I would say failure to adapt, right? I know that sounds so simple, but to me, not adapting to the environment, right? And I will say the senior and we talk about the people who stayed extra long, 20 or more, but a failure to adapt to the environment, right? Not recognizing, oh, here's what I need to come in here and be successful. I look at it like you talked about working, advising Iraq Air. With my indige, that was my security, right? I had to build rapport, build their trust, and do all that. It's the same thing as I go in with my community at Cornell or wherever I work. Like I have to adapt myself to that situation, and probably one of the biggest pitfalls is not adapting. Going, I know what I know, and I'm gung ho, or hey, military is the only place that can teach you leadership. False. No, there's other places that can teach you. It is very good at teaching leadership, but it's not the only place where you can learn to become a leader. So I think them are a couple of the common pitfalls I see.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, but
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Jesse. And thanks for coming on board today. It always means a lot when you have time to, come in and see what we're doing here on Thursdays. Appreciate it. Okay, let's see. Do we have anyone else that's interested here? I don't see any pause on the participants board. So, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give just a couple more seconds just in case somebody's, taking a shot of liquid courage. That's coffee, by the way, and has a question for Herb. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your being on board today, Angel, as well. Okay. All right, folks. Well, this is going to wrap it up. Herb, it was fantastic having you on board today. Yes, thank you for your service to our country and the Army, and for the continued service that you're in now with helping veterans and just being a people person in general. You get that about what's important in life, and that's it's on display here for everyone to see, and it's much appreciated by everyone, especially the folks that are on the receiving end of your time and effort here. Please, if you can remember, shoot me a link for that shirt, because I want to secure one for myself as well. And that's a whole nother topic to talk to. And, everyone's probably has an opinion on it. I wound up actually spending some time, donating some money to, an organization and to some folks. Not a lot, but, we're searching for how can we help, what can we do? So, if you can do that, that's a good thing. Or maybe if it's just, being encouraging out there and sharing words of encouragement, opposed to trying to get up there and talk about, battlefield tactics and other things that probably don't really do any good for anyone. But anyhow, Herb, thank you again. It's a blessing to have you on our show, and have a great weekend coming up. And everyone else, thanks for your time, and we'll see you next week, hopefully.
hey, thanks for having me, Scott.